And that for some reason, set off Jones. He saw it as, disingenuous or what have you, and started, talking, confiding in this Republican colleague how he sort of wished that this Republican colleague of his would be shot dead, and that another colleague's children would be shot.
Welcome to Deep Dive. We're diving into the story of Jay Jones, Virginia's Democratic nominee for Attorney General, who's been facing a barrage of controversy. We're joined by Robert Schmad, an investigative reporter for the Washington Examiner, who's been closely following this story. Well, Robert, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, it's good to be here.
Now, before we get into the specifics of your recent reporting, could you give our viewers a quick overview of who Jay Jones is and the core issues he's currently facing?
Yeah, so Jay Jones is the Democratic nominee for Virginia Attorney General. He's currently facing a number of controversies, chief among them being this text chain reported by a National Review, wherein he sort of wished death upon both his Republican colleagues and their children. That's causing sort of a ripple effect in the race with the Democratic nominee for governor, Representative Abigail Spanberger, sort of refusing to revoke her endorsement of him. And we've seen the polling in the Attorney General race, at least, tighten quite a bit, with the Republican incumbent and Jones being just about neck and neck in the most recent polling I've seen.
Let's start with the issue that really brought this to the forefront, the text messages. Can you describe the context of those messages and the reaction they've generated?
Yeah, so Jones formerly served in Virginia's state legislature. In the context of those text messages, he was messaging a Republican colleague following the funeral for a longtime Democratic lawmaker. And at this funeral, a prominent Virginia state Republican in the state legislature, had eulogized this deceased Democrat, and that for some reason, set off Jones. He saw it as, disingenuous or what have you, and started, talking, confiding in this Republican colleague how he sort of wished that this Republican colleague of his would be shot dead, and that another colleague's children would be shot, such that they would, understand, I guess, the ramifications of their beliefs as it relates to guns. He said something along the lines of, people only change their minds when it, really affects them. And that was sort of roundly condemned across the board. However, some are arguing that Democrats in Virginia haven't gone far enough by, revoking their endorsements of Jones.
And before these messages surfaced, Jones had a speeding incident that led to a community service requirement. How did he fulfill that requirement, and what's been the controversy surrounding it?
Yeah, so Jones was going, I believe, over 100 miles an hour in a jurisdiction in Virginia, 116 miles per hour, I think it was, in New Kent County. And his deal he struck with the judge, typically this, carries a pretty hefty fine and jail time, but he managed to weasel his way out of this jail time by striking a deal with the judge that he would accomplish 1,000 hours of community service in 2023. Now, his community service occurred at his own political action committee and with the NAACP Virginia chapter. It sort of raises some red flags. Indeed, a prosecutor in New Kent County, where he was charged, says that typically community service activities have to be non-political at a traditional 501c3 nonprofit, which, the PAC and clearly was not. Over the course of his time at the PAC, he just sort of was yucking it up with Democratic recruits across the state of Virginia, having luncheons, candidate training meetings, effectively stuff to build his political profile and his political power in the state, which is fine on its own. But when you're doing that to fulfill what should be community service, I think that has a lot of people sort of, questioning whether or not he really atoned for his speeding in the way he should have.
Your reporting sheds light on what Jones was actually doing during his community service. Can you walk us through some of the activities you uncovered, particularly those at Meet Our Moment?
Yeah, so the good faith explanation for what Jones did is part of his community service indeed was with the NAACP, which has a 501c3 arm. However, the one sort of public example of work with the NAACP during that period I could find was his work on a lawsuit suing Glenn Youngkin, who is the Republican governor of Virginia. So that on its own already seems sort of political. And further, I just think the good faith argument is sort of tough because neither Jones's PAC nor the NAACP have produced sort of receipts as to what he did during this time. In terms of what the prosecution said, Randy Del Rossi, who's a prosecutor, like I said, and New Kent County said, and I think that the quote here is, in order to receive a non-jail outcome in reference to a speeding ticket, community service is an unpaid service for any non-political charitable nonprofit. And I don't know. I don't think that Jones's PAC, political action committee, it's in the name, certainly not political. And the NAACP, that's kind of an edge case.
Were you able to get timesheets or any formal verification of the hours he claimed to have completed?
Yeah, those were not submitted to the court by Jones. Jones did not respond to a request for comment when I reached out to him. So, and to my knowledge, no outlet has received these. So it's sort of unknown exactly how he fulfilled those thousands of hours of community service while concurrently actually working in the Biden administration. So a full-time job plus 1,000 hours of community service. It's a tall ask, and to not provide receipts for that while you're running for public office, that's a little bit concerning.
Now let's turn to the issue of campaign donations. Your reporting revealed that many corporate donors are sticking by Jones despite the controversies. Who are some of these donors and why might they be hesitant to withdraw their support?
Yeah, so we're looking at some of the biggest tobacco corporations in the country: Phillips Morgan, International, Altria, Reynolds American, Swedish Match, and these are the names themselves may not be immediately recognizable, but their brands certainly are. Like think Zyn nicotine pouches, Camel cigarettes, Newports, all of these donors to Jones, and none of them, when we reached out to them, would condemn Jones, would condemn his statement, or would even say that they'd look into potentially getting their donation to him refunded. And these are tens of thousands of dollars, which in a state race goes a pretty long way. Tobacco companies aside, there's also some large gambling ventures. Probably the biggest being Prize Picks, which is a sort of online sports betting giant. And then also a lot of really big law firms. Probably the biggest name among them being McGuire Woods, which is a massive national firm. And none of these firms, when reached by us, would condemn Jones or his comments, or had anything to say about their contribution to him. And yeah, in terms of why that may be, is I think there's per the polling, despite his controversies, there's a reasonable chance that Jay Jones could be Virginia Attorney General come November. Could win the race in November and be inaugurated soon after. And that for industries like tobacco and gambling could be a big deal because state attorney generals often bring cases against firms in those industries. The tobacco industry specifically has been out billions of dollars as a result of lawsuits brought by attorneys general. So that there's a pretty clear incentive there to not throw Jones under the bus. And the law firms are going to be representing clients, before courts, in the event of action brought by whoever Virginia's next attorney general may be. So also, pretty clear incentive there as to why they may be hesitant to throw him under the bus.
You also mentioned that some organizations have withdrawn their support or endorsements. Can you tell us about that?
So they didn't quite go as far as to withdraw their endorsement, but Gen Growth Financial, which is a pretty large financial services firm, they manage about 87 billion in assets. They're publicly traded. They did get back to us, and they just sort of gave a blanket condemnation of political violence and rhetoric that suggests it, which is the furthest anyone would go. They didn't name Jones specifically in their statement or say anything about uh, the donation they had made to him. So it's sort of like a half measure, but better than everyone else.
So, what does all this say about the current political climate in Virginia, and how much is too much for donors?
How much is too much for donors? It's a great question. I think that the sort of cynical calculation going on at the headquarters of these corporations is, listen, maybe what Jones said is bad, but the negative PR we get from sticking by him doesn't quite measure up to, provoking his ire and then potentially getting hit with a lawsuit if he is to win. Corporations aside, the fact that the race is still so close, despite Jones's pretty unambiguously out of bounds statements, for lack of a better term. That maybe says something about the electorate in Virginia in terms of how willing it is to accept radicals if it means keeping Republicans out of power. Which, yeah, that probably is not a positive development for democracy, but that is how it is on the ground.
Well, thank you so much, Robert, for sharing your insights with us. We look forward to your future coverage as the election nears.
For sure. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks so much for watching Deep Dive. Please visit our website for more of these investigations and feel free to send us your questions or story ideas. We hope to see you back here next week.